Hello and welcome to my Mental Cloud podcast where I talk about pretty much anything and everything just to get things off of my head and my chest. In today's episode, we talk about goats, not the animals that eat everything, but we're talking about the goats, as in greatest of all times. Um, my thoughts of that is really dependent on what you do, what you accomplish, and everything like that. Now, I actually have been biased towards Michael Jordan for the last I don't know how many years. And anytime people talk about Kobe at first, I didn't like Kobe for a while because Kobe pretty much did everything that Michael Jordan did, except for he didn't win 6 championships. Michael has a lot more trophies, obviously, more MVPs, more Defensive Players of the Year, stuff like that. I mean, there's a lot of things that Michael has accomplished as far as like his trophy case compared to him and LeBron. Kobe and LeBron have way smaller trophy case than what Michael Jordan has. Now, me sitting here thinking, okay, look at the trophy case. Look at all the things that Michael Jordan has accomplished, and also in a smaller amount of time than what LeBron and Kobe have also gotten all their information and all their stats and stuff done. And the reason why I bring this up because what really got me going was the idea of the greatest of all time. What makes you the greatest of all time? Now, obviously, everybody thinks that Michael Jordan is the greatest of all time. He was voted number one in the top 75. Obviously, a lot of people and most people think that Michael Jordan is the greatest of all time, including Kobe Bryant. He says, "Stop comparing me to the greatest of all time," which is a very humble statement, even though he, for a long time, said that it went Wilt, him, and then Mike, right? And I think that was the trash talker in him while he was playing sports, but he also gave his flowers to Mike, saying that I don't win 5 championships without Mike. I'm not here. I'm not me without Mike. Right? So let's get into what conversations we had, right? So I'm not going to bring up the stats because everybody does on YouTube, and you could probably go to any video where they do that. And it's like, one thing I really started noticing was a lot of people start pulling out the dumbest stuff to make stats to try to justify them thinking that LeBron is better than Michael Jordan. No. LeBron has more postseason points than Michael Jordan. Well, yeah, he's played in more postseason games than Michael Jordan. LeBron has more games total than Michael Jordan. Yeah, because he played in more seasons than Michael Jordan. Those are stupid stats that people are literally trying to make to justify that somebody is better than somebody else, right? You can't use what he actually has in his trophy case to do that. But you want to bring up numbers that are stupid like that. How many teams does he win a championship on? Okay, he's won a championship on 3 teams. That's not necessarily a good thing. We can say it's a good thing, but it's not necessarily a good thing. So when it comes to Michael Jordan, and we're talking about basketball right now, we'll go into another sport in a second, but when it comes to basketball, Michael Jordan is the greatest of all time, hands down. I mean, you look at his trophy case, you look at what he's accomplished in the amount of years that he's accomplished it, and hands down, he is the greatest of all time. Now, you could talk about Bill Russell having 11 championships, but then you have to look at all the rest of the trophy case, not just the championships. That being said, I had a conversation with another basketball enthusiast the other day, and he kind of put me on game, which actually makes a lot of sense. And if a lot of people will start thinking about it this way, things will change as far as the conversation is concerned. So one time we were talking about Shaq, and I asked him, I said, what do you think about Shaq saying that once he passes Kareem, he's the greatest, right? I know Shaq recanted that statement, but, I mean, he already said it, so it means he thought it at one point. And at first, I lost a lot of respect for Shaq, right? And then I was like, you know what? He's Shaq. It doesn't matter. And he's already retired, so, again, it doesn't matter. There's a lot of people coming out the woodworks that really hate Mike because of that documentary that happened, even though the documentary was supposed to be centered around the entire Bulls dynasty. It was really a Michael Jordan. Documentary. So a lot of people got hurt. Scottie Pippen, even though he would not have anything that he has if it wasn't for Mike, has also come out and said a bunch of negative things about Mike, including to say LeBron was better than Mike. However, LeBron, in my opinion, play-wise, is more like Scottie Pippen than he is Michael Jordan, and it's not to say that LeBron isn't good, because LeBron is a great player. He's just not Michael Jordan or Kobe Bryant great. And then when we had this conversation, I said, hey, so how in the world are people going to say that once LeBron passes Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, who, by the way, isn't even in the conversation as the GOAT, um, he's going to become the greatest of all time. You can't compare somebody to somebody else that's not even in the conversation. A lot of people will say Kareem Abdul-Jabbar is on the Mount Rushmore, but they never say he's better than Michael Jordan or he's the GOAT, right? So how is LeBron passing him in numbers going to make him the GOAT? Now, this person that I had a conversation with put me on game because he said it's not necessarily that he's the greatest player of all time, is that he would have the greatest career of all time. And there's two different things you have to look at. So greatest player of all time is Michael Jordan, right? He's on the court, that's what he is, right? He's the greatest player. But if you look at overall career, yes, we can talk about the trophy case again, right? But when you're talking about overall career, it's all stats and all numbers. Right, LeBron has 4 championships. That's cool. I mean, Bill Russell has 11, Shaq has 4, but Shaq is still considered the most dominant center to ever play the game, right? He's the greatest player, the greatest center to ever play the game. So that being said, it's one of those things where it's like, even though LeBron is a great player, I don't think he will ever surpass Michael Jordan as the greatest player of all times. When you separate it into two separate things, it makes sense, right? The greatest career of all times does not necessarily mean you're the greatest player of all times. LeBron, I think, is a close third as far as players are concerned. LeBron has gotten a lot better over the years. We've watched him evolve. He shoots threes. The thing is, though, everybody said he couldn't shoot, but I agree. I disagree. Like, I really do disagree. If you get a chance, watch the Christmas game, his rookie season against Tracy McGrady, and tell me he can't shoot. His form has changed a lot, and he's playing a different game. But at the end of the day, he's not better than Michael Jordan, right? He's a great player. He's one of the best court visions people I've ever seen. He's great, but he's not going to win a championship with the way that people play with him. It's almost like he has fans on the team and not players. Once he's not there, they don't know what to do. Recently, there was a game against the Mavericks, I want to say, that the Lakers let 82 points go in the first half. First off, I don't understand how you can get that was normally like the end of the game during the 90s. People weren't shooting as many threes. It'd be like closer to like 80 to 100 points. Anything over 100 points was not a normalcy. So for them to let 82 points go in the first half because LeBron's not there is a very interesting situation. Another thing when we talk about GOATs is the way that you win, right? Michael Jordan has it's almost sickly when it comes to competitiveness, right? Like Kobe Bryant was, like they always say, a reincarnation of Michael Jordan as far as the way he was on the court, his competition on the court. But he doesn't compete in everything he does. Basketball is what he competes in. He competes in things that he knows he can win. That's his words, right? So he's not going to compete with you in golf if he can't beat you in golf. He's not going to compete with you in ping pong or whatever if he can't beat you in it. So that being said, Kobe Bryant knew that he knew his place in basketball. And he knew where to be competitive at. And other than that, he actually had more of a life outside of basketball than I think Michael Jordan did. But at the same time, Michael Jordan was the first player to ever be that famous as, like, to the point where celebrities will blush when Michael Jordan showed up places. So, yeah, when it comes to the GOAT situation, I think that I was put on game, and I actually appreciate the thought process of this guy who gave me this information saying, hey, you got to look at it in two different ways. One is for actual skill and play and how they impacted the game and all this type of stuff, right? But then you also have to look at the overall career. LeBron's career, nobody's touching LeBron's career. And then when he passes Kareem, even if he doesn't pass Kareem, he's still the greatest career basketball player of all times. He's the most longevity. He's in his year, 18 or 19 right now? I think it's 18. Yeah, he's in year 18 right now, and he's still dominating players. Like, if you look at players that played for 20 years, He's better than Kobe Bryant was at, I would say, Kobe Bryant's 18th year. As far as like numbers wise. Now, as far as skill, that's debatable again. That's another debatable thing. But as far as numbers are concerned, he's putting up way better numbers than most people in the NBA, and he should not be doing that. Vince Carter was a threat, but he wasn't a threat. When Vince Carter was on the court, you know he could hit a three, you know he can dunk, he could do whatever he needed to do, but he's not the same person as he was in his prime. LeBron's prime was back in Miami. LeBron might not be as good not as good. He might not be as dominant as he was in Miami. But he's still the most dominant player in the league right now. And I hope that everybody that hears this gets offended because Anthony Davis is trash. Nobody else on this team, on the court, is as dominant as LeBron James. I don't even think Kevin Durant at this point, even though they're years apart, I don't think Kevin Durant can even hold LeBron. But on to another sport, football, right? Football is, for a while I was saying that football, that Tom Brady was the greatest player of all times. Now, after hearing the whole career thing, I have to disagree with my old thought process. Tom Brady is not the greatest player of all times. He might be the greatest quarterback of all time. No, he won't even be the greatest quarterback of all times. I think the greatest quarterback of all times is Peyton Manning. But the greatest player of all time, they voted Barry Sanders, but I still don't believe that you can be the greatest player of all times if you play one position. Barry Sanders was a running back. He really didn't do much. So this is where I go to my statement, and a lot of people are probably going to be like, what? Who is this? And then I encourage you to look this man up. Cordell Stewart was drafted in 1985 to the Steelers, I want to say. Cordell Stewart, a lot of people don't know about him. He ended up being a quarterback for the Steelers for a while, and he moved on to the Ravens and some other places too. But the main thing is, one of the reasons why I think he was the greatest player of all times is because Cordell Stewart was a wide receiver. Like actual wide receiver, not I'm passing the ball to you for you to pass me the ball again. No, none of that. No, an actual wide receiver on the line playing wide receiver. He was also a running back on the line playing running back with a quarterback in the league, in the game. And then he also played quarterback. And then at one point, he was a very successful punter for a team. So playing 4 different positions means to me that he's the greatest player in the NFL of all times because he's played multiple positions. Now, I'm not saying that there's no other player that could do that. I guarantee you there is, but they haven't done it, right? Cooper Kupp is a wide receiver, and that's what he's going to be. Tom Brady is a quarterback, and that's all he's going to be. Peyton Manning is a quarterback, and that's all he's going to be, right? So when it comes to the greatest of all time, like, for each position is important. But then when you talk about overall player, I have to go with Cordell Stewart. If you have a problem with it, go ahead and leave it in the comments what you think. But then you start looking at things differently. I'm saying, like, when you're talking about the greatest of all time, we need to look at it from a logical standpoint. To say Tom Brady is the greatest football player of all times is wrong, right? Because he is literally just a quarterback. And he even said to himself, he can't go out there and run routes. He can't go out there and play defense. He's a quarterback. That's what he does. And he's not as athletic as anybody else. So I think that when it comes to football, that every position can have a greatest of all time. When it comes to basketball, though, however, because of the way that things have changed, right? You can have a single greatest player of all times, but I think it's also noted that even though LeBron might be the greatest of all times when it comes to his career, he's not the greatest of all time when it comes to being a player. But yeah, that's it.